Welcome back to the Dungeon Master's Block, the place where we come to talk about the Dungeon Master, the most important person in the game. With every conversation, we hope to inspire as many as possible to keep on Dungeon Mastering.
And I'm one of your hosts, Leonidas. No, this is episode 300, not the movie, but I am one of your hosts, DM Neal, a.k.a. Jote Maniac.
You've been waiting for a while to
Oh my gosh, so long! I just want the whole episode to be about the movie. Gerard Butler declined. We didn't ask.
I guess I'm your other host, Xerxes. Gotta be opposites here.
Great choice.
I'm your other host, DM Derrick,
a.k.a. How Not to DM. And today, it is in fact episode 300. And we thought that one of the best things to do would be to go back to one of the absolute earliest things that the podcast ever did, one of the beloved favorites, and go back to creation and inspiration. And since we're at 10 years, and this will be creation and inspiration number 10, and we're at 300 episodes, we only felt right to line everything up and bridge the gap between how many ideas you've been given over the years and getting to 300 total ideas.
So patrons, be on the lookout for a recap of all 300 of the great campaign and one-shot ideas that have been collated and compiled here on the Dungeon Master's Block in past episodes on the Patreon. We're going to type out all of them so you can read through them, you can roll your D100 on them, whatever it is you're going to do to pick out your next idea for your campaign.
But rather than talk about this for a second longer, let's head to the meat.
I'm starving. We ain't had nothing but maggoty bread for 3 stinking days.
Why can't we have some meats?
This is Sparta!
Today on the meat, we are going to be giving you 35 ideas today and 35 more on the next episode because we realized we are very short of 300. But before we did that, we wanted to talk about what got us here. So we're going to give you a quick, very short breakdown of the episodes where you can go and find the original ideas in case you just wanted to listen to them. And maybe that's the D10 you roll and you go listen to an episode and pull an idea from there.
Okay, there have been quite a few in the past, so get out your pens and pencils. All right, episode 6. There were 20 ideas from Mitch and Chris. Episode 12, again, 20 ideas. Episode 22, 30 ideas between Mitch, Chris, and Michael Ross. Episode 39, 30 ideas between Mitch, Chris, and Morgan Jenkins. Episode 53, 30 ideas between Mitch, Chris, and Lou Anders. Ooh, that would be a good one. Episode 82, 20 ideas between Mitch, Neal, and Jim McClure. Episodes 125, 126, and 127, 40 ideas total. I remember that one. Was that like a holiday special or something?
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun.
With our powers combined.
Yeah, that's right. Mitch, Neal, Ian, and Andrew. Episodes 163, 20 ideas between Mitch, Neal, Josh, and Matt. Episode 252 and 253, Mitch, Chris, and Neal, 10 ideas. Episode 290, 10 ideas between Neal and Jared. And today, here we are, episode 300. We're going to do 35-ish ideas between the two of us, and then we'll do some more for 301.
Absolutely. That's where it is. I'll drop it in the show notes. It probably won't be that helpful. So yeah, you can go back and then, as we said, with the Patreon, you can check all of those ideas compiled there. But we have no more time to talk about anything else because we have 35 ideas to get through quickly. These will definitely be the seeds of ideas and not much discussion. So what is I didn't number these. Do you want,
mine is just stream of consciousness,
okay,
baby.
Well, I have them numbered, so I could start at the bottom.
I've got like my best one, and then the rest are just kind of whatever.
Okay, so we can save the best one for last then. Then I'll just start at number 17 for me and I don't know, sometimes I get compelled to try and make the titles sound more interesting. It's successful sometimes. Invisibility Impurities.
Okay.
Either a one-shot or an entire campaign where there is a actual facility that is creating magical potions and there is runoff into the water supply.
Oh,
and so now an entire town or set of people is becoming invisible. Like it's either certain intervals, or they are for an extended period of time? Like, are you looking at some sort of permanence? And obviously, the second this idea is implemented, everything's on the table when it comes to potions or things that could have leached into the water supply and are then affecting the surrounding area.
Totally. This would be a fun thing to throw into Salt Marsh, too, at the Styes, just because the water is just super gross there as well. I love it. All right, my number 17. I'm channeling my inner Edgar Rice Burroughs here. It's just you're playing on another planet, so you get to make up whatever it is, but you can use that planet's surface to decide what your world will look like. So, for instance, I like Mars, so I just said, okay, what if Mars had water on it? Someone has made that map already. That is now the map of my fantasy world. We're playing this game, and it's on Mars, and the dirt's all red. And, is there going to be some reveal that they find out there's another planet with people on it, or is it not even going to come up? I don't know, but it's fun.
Wow, I like that. Yeah, finding alternative ways to make maps from real world things, and then your players never knowing. It's George R. R. Martin. I think he just flipped Europe upside down or something, and he's like, yeah.
Yes, he did. He took Ireland and flipped it upside down.
That's what it was.
And threw it on the top of England.
Yeah.
And adjusted a few lines, and that was it. Totally.
So my number 16 is a haunted lighthouse. I did not name that, interestingly enough. I'm sure I could get to it eventually. But basically, the lighthouse keeper has gone missing, and the assumption then is more superstitious type of people just assume then it's haunted because the lights have been going on and off. And basically, the party needs to go in, figure out what's going on. My thing is that they will encounter spectral shades and things like that, and then eventually uncover some sort of tragic truth. So, yeah, haunted lighthouse. I feel like it fits right in, but there's also a lot you could do to twist and turns and things like that.
Very easy to throw in anywhere there's water. All right, my number 16 is Future Earth. Again, a tried and true fantasy trope. The Chronicles of Shannara play on this. A lot of other things play on this. The world we live in is a fantasy world, but it's just because it's Earth and it's the future, and you get to decide why magic showed up and how all these other races showed up. But that means that people can dig and find weird relics from the past that just happen to be technology that you and I use every day.
Numenera! So that's
that too.
Yeah, so that's immediately what always comes to mind, and shouting Numenera because it's the only way you're supposed to say it, I've heard. I like that. I like it. It's interesting figuring out what certain pieces, and certainly right now in the absolute pinnacle of the zeitgeist is Space Marine 2. And it's also interesting if you look at the way that they approach technology, it's a really helpful tool because it's set 40,000 years in the future and they almost know why technology works, but they don't. And so they often use a very reverent, I need to awaken the machine spirit, things like that. So a lot of things that you could pull over into your D&D game if you have some technology.
Yeah, for sure.
This one feels like I had to have said it or it's out there, but I just couldn't find it. So it's a living maze. It's just basically your pretty standard hedge maze, but it's alive. And so you have to get to the center of it to figure out, is it corrupted? What is the sentience that's going on here? And then you can have treants and all sorts of things. But I would focus almost completely on the idea of just plant-based enemies. There's no fauna, only flora. And then basically the party has to get to the center and figure out what's wrong.
It's a fun twist on the ever-changing labyrinth that's kind of already there. Yeah, I like it. All right, my number 15 is In the Trenches. You start the game, whether or not it's going to be a long-form campaign or just a one-shot, right in the trenches of a battle as it's happening. Fireballs are exploding overhead, and they've kind of got to figure out what's going on and why. It's just kind of a fun, quick start, but then, warfare in general is an interesting thing, and I feel like a lot of the stuff I've played in the past doesn't really play well to large-scale combat, but I think it'd be a fun thing to explore. How do you function as a unit in a much larger battle, and what do you do, and what is your goal, and are you successful or not, and how does that impact the end result of this particular battle? Anyway, that's pretty simple, but that's number 15.
Yeah, I think it's the whole reason D&D got created, was to take large scale battles and start telling the stories of characters that are in those battles. And I think that still holds true. I think there's something so difficult about doing large scale battles where the players, you and your players are going back and forth about it. I think if this then that's are a really good way to do large battles, and the small things that the players do can affect that flow chart. But not having them do like, okay, my 1,000 guys and those 1,000 orcs or goblins go against each other, and how does it turn out? Like, you just get in the literal slog of it. So yeah, huge fan of this idea. Speaking of ideas I'm a fan of, I don't know that I should put this as low on the list as it is, but I really don't want to adjust my list. So I call this one Shifting Caves, where basically there's a trade route, something like that, and people start going missing. Once the PCs investigate it, they figure out that there's a series of caves that are inhabited by an entire pack of displacer beasts whose collective and combined powers have actually begun displacing the surrounding area, the caves and the pathway and things like that. So people are genuinely like going missing, or like they're easily being taken because they'll like basically shift them to a different spot. Yeah. So the Shifting Caves.
Secret tunnel will make it nefarious.
Nice.
Yeah. All right. Number 14 for me. And I believe Mitch has done one like this. I'm remembering something similar, but magic versus anti-magic, in that like the world is full of people who practice magic and then those who persecute those who practice magic. And which side do you fall on? Which side does your family fall on? What are the implications of a society that bans it outright, and how would they find people who are doing it? And then where would those people kind of hide? Where would they go? What would the resistance of this anti-magic movement look like? I feel like it's kind of a fun thing you could do either worldwide or maybe just like one particular city. You show up and they're like, you can't bring any of that stuff in. Also, you can't cast spells, and here's the punishment, and kind of, see how long it takes for your players to try to push that envelope.
I like it. I would definitely suggest like looking at Days of Future Past, the X-Men story, because like mutant powers, magic, totally. Like that, those things can definitely go hand in hand. That one, yeah, there's a ton of fun can be. It also can be not fun. Like that one can get into some spaces and places to like caution, certainly. But like, I think there's definitely a way to do that. And like you said, have that resistance fighter feel, and then bring magic back to the world.
Right.
The Kraken's Curse. So basically this one, now that I'm rereading it, it's got way more Cthulhu vibes than I was intending originally. But the idea that like there's a Kraken that keeps coming up and it's just like, well, yeah, pay me tribute, or the curse comes back. And you're like, wait, what curse? And everything just starts turning into like, my idea was more fish based. But you could certainly go more like Eldritch. And basically if they're not paying tribute to this Kraken, then bad things are happening to the whole coast. So then what I wrote was the PCs need to appease it. Like, not necessarily, do you find a way to make it go away? Do you find a way to defeat it? Do you find a way to like take its power? Or do you find it a way that it can't make the curse? So this is definitely one that I would lean more towards campaign and kind of vibe out like what the players think is the best option, and then just go with that one.
Yeah, let them pursue it. I like it. All right, my next one is Spelljammer, but make it alien. You've got people who are on a Spelljammer ship. They discover some planet or asteroid or whatever, explore it further, and then maybe you lean on the Slod for this, or maybe you find some other monster, maybe you homebrew it, but someone gets infected, brings it back on the ship, and then one by one, you get to turn players into monsters that eat the other players or something like that. Classic, good way to kind of bake some horror and some suspense and some thriller stuff into a normal game. Again, maybe more like a one-shot, but also you could throw this into any kind of campaign. If it's nautical, it still could work. They don't have to be in space for this to kind of be a threat that you want to throw at them.
Nothics. I think Nothics are wildly underused, and I think would work really well here. Because in like the Fandelver, there's one basically like hiding in a trench and then just shooting its hey, what are you thinking about, Ray, at the players when they go by. And I think it's also an interesting twist, especially with Spelljammer and all the spells that people are afforded, to have that creature be even more intelligent and start to be able to pick out like what the players are thinking. So yeah, Nothics, that's my suggestion. And it pops out of your eye instead of your chest. I apologize. So mine is Whispers in the Wind. And this one, not all of these I really know how to implement, but they sound cool. So we're going to keep with it. Basically, to start it off, strange lights have been spotted over a nearby forest. When you go to investigate, you discover an owlbear protecting its young against something, and you can't see it. Slowly but surely, you figure out that the wind itself has come to life in this area and is killing things. And you have to navigate. Okay, wait. So there's literally I haven't seen the wind. I've seen the effects of the wind. But like there's a literal invisible force that you're having to deal with. And I think of now, it's not Bird Box or like The Quiet Place, but like I can see potentially going those directions with this if you wanted more of a horror feel, because it's like, okay, so when we stop, we have to like basically not necessarily airtight, but like, we have to batten down the hatches, because if enough wind can get in, well, then what do we do? And so you could, a lot of elements with this one you can do. I didn't mean that. It's a pun, but whatever.
Oh, there it is. All right, my next one is magic suits of armor, or powered suits of armor. And this is ripping shamelessly off of Josh Lorimer's actual play show called Titans of Altera. Basically, his players find these giant suits made out of stone or whatever, and they get inside them, and now they can pilot them, and they have special abilities. And also, the previous pilot is like in there still, or their consciousness is, and so they can give you information, and they can train you, and they can tell you a little, like, piece together the history of what happened in the past. Basically, it's like Voltron or whatever, but super fun. So check out Titans of Altera if you think that sounds like a fun idea. I think Josh did a really good idea, really well with it. But, homebrew away and make up whatever you want. What player doesn't want to feel super powerful and then, have to fight really powerful enemies in this suit that they find?
I feel like this could be a perfect one for it, but maybe not. But this one is called Rusting Heart, where the party stumbles into a village that's been plagued by a strange illness that no one has seen before. The investigation leads them to find either the cave system, cavern, lair, dungeon, whatever you need, whatever you want. And this is an interesting concept that I will throw out that works. Try it out, take your favorite monster, and just keep making it older. Keep making it bigger. See what comes to mind when you do that. So this is going to be an ancient rust monster. And what it's going to be doing is actually rusting the minerals in the surrounding area. So when they're eating their crops, when they're getting their water, when they're just doing basic life in that area, they're basically ingesting the magical rust component from that ancient rust monster. Rusting Heart.
Yeah, the water's super brackish. You kind of got to dig down and figure out what's going on. I like it. All right, my next one is the Crash Landing. Again, could be space, could be Spelljammer, could be just a ship in general. But the idea is that each of you is very different kinds of people who are on this ship. And when you crash, you have to band together to survive whatever horrors this island has. Like perhaps there's some kind of solar eclipse, and then a bunch of creatures come out that haven't come out in a lot of years, and they attack, and you have to use your powers combined. Maybe one of you is a prisoner who's got like special dark vision, something like that could be a lot of fun. And again, this is just me ripping off Riddick. So,
nice.
but it would be really fun, I think.
20 Menthol Cools.
Yeah, those are still around.
So mine is called, for number 10. Yeah, I don't know. It felt more exciting to say it was number 10 because I'm so used to that being the start of most of our lists. Elemental Incursions. I don't know that I've necessarily done it all the way like this, but I feel like there are some ideas that harken back to this. But basically, the elemental planes themselves are in turmoil, and the material plane is caught in the crossfire. Crossed up portals keep popping up everywhere, and the players need to deal with them, and then you can have the campaign to deal with the larger issue. One of the things I've always found interesting is where the planes meet. And I know I've talked about that in a different episode, like that liminal, like not liminal space, but like that space between the two where, in theory, in the cosmos, the two planes meet. So if I have water and fire, the elemental plane of steam. If I have water and earth, the elemental plane of mud. And so like you could go into that as much as you want, where it's like this foggy area, but it's also burning. Or like, you're slogging through mud because these two incursion points have happened on the material plane. And then from there you can get fun with mud elementals and steam elementals and doing all these things that your players may not be prepared for, because the rest of them, I mean, you're at the point where like it's a fire elemental Pokemon. Like, you almost with the standard elemental set, you get into almost Pokemon rules. So I'll use all my grass moves against the water elemental.
Where did Pokemon get it?
Yeah,
probably from D&D.
So yeah,
I like it.
What did you want? Number 10.
Number 10. I feel like this is a classic fantasy trope that doesn't get used very much anymore, and I think there's a reason why, but I think it could be resurrected in a way that is respectful and fun. A daring rescue of a lover from a foul noble. The damsel in distress. I think, people definitely try to shy away from it just because they don't want to, again, be disrespectful with the tropes, but I feel like a lot of modern D&D games end up having some kind of element of romance, and, when you're doing it in the right way with everybody's consent and everybody's having a good time, I think it'd be really fun to kidnap said lovers and, let everybody storm the castle and rescue, the lover from the foul noble or the wizard or whoever it's going to be, and kind of play to that trope. I think that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it still works. I mean, that's the first thing I think of. It can still work, and you don't lose all of the agency for that character, because the whole basis of it is like the person that's doing it sucks. They're terrible, and they're abusing whatever power they happen to have, and that's what you're going against. So I like it, and figuring out like who, what does a loved one mean to each character can also be an interesting thing. Or you have a certain character's backstory where you think it fits the most, and you're kind of shining a light on that character's particular backstory for that part of the campaign, which is typically how I approach it. I know that's the Genesis system in the Star Wars also kind of does that, where you're basically rolling, and once a player character passes a certain threshold, like their backstory comes into prominence. So I've definitely ported that over to D&D for certain campaigns as well. I don't know that I like the name, because I feel like the second word carries a lot with it, but we'll just go with it because I don't have time to change it. So this one is called the Celestial Crusade. So basically, a group of Celestials has descended upon the material plane, and I keep using that as a fill-in for your world, my world, whatever world. And basically, they're there to battle a powerful evil that threatens all of existence. But the party actually has to navigate more so the fact that they're there than what they're dealing with. The idea of like this celestial force just showing up into the world, like what are the ramifications of that? What are the things that need to be fixed or moved or changed? And so you don't even necessarily have to address what they're battling, because there's so much to address in the fact that they just showed up. Like, are they draining resources? Are they, what effects are they having on the world that then the PCs need to navigate through?
Yeah, leaving a bunch of destruction in their wake and not really taking care of it because they have bigger fish to fry, in their mind. Yeah, all sorts of fun stuff you could do with that. All right, my next one, we talked about this with JR Zambrano a little while ago. And JR, if you're listening, shout out to you, because I was watching your videos about the Avatar system recently, which is a lot of fun. So thanks for doing that for us.
Yeah, same thing. I was like, JR, you're making videos out here. I feel like we missed that opportunity to shout that out. Like, I was like, yeah, his articles are great, but he's also making video content as well on YouTube.
Yeah, so Bell of Lost Souls YouTube account, he's got a bunch of videos about different systems and how to play them and that kind of thing. Anyway, he mentioned that his favorite trope is the Seven Samurai, and I really like it too. I've never run a game like this, but I think it would be a lot of fun where basically you happen upon a village of farmers who are being threatened by bandits, and you've got to help them to train themselves or to fortify themselves or something to prevent this next attack so that they don't lose all of their crops and starve. It's like Rebel Moon, which I did hate watch, and hated, but do it a lot better than Rebel Moon did.
I didn't watch it, so there you go.
Don't watch it.
Great, perfect.
It was terrible.
It got his entire Army of the Dead thing canceled because it was so bad. My next one for number 8 is called Abyssal Transference. There's a comic book series from Robert Kirkman, that the person who did The Walking Dead, called Oblivion. And what basically ends up happening is they create a piece of technology and they're like, this will be great. Blap. And like this giant section of, I forget if it's a real world city. I cannot remember which one, but basically a huge area transfers with another world. That has all of these things in it that like basically are trying to kill anyone and everyone. And it's more monstrous with like these vines that are kind of taking over everything. And like, they're as much a monster as anything else. And so I was going to do that with like part of like an abyssal plane. So does like someone create a ritual inside of Waterdeep, and part of Waterdeep transfers over. And that also means then part of that world transfers back. And so one of the big plot points there is our world deals with the whatever shows up, because you're in the middle of town, there's adventurers everywhere. But now the question is, okay, where did they go and can we get them back? So yeah, I would suggest reading that comic series. It is interesting because some people, they stay there for so long because they just live there then. They're like, what else would I do? I've been here for years. So yeah, Abyssal Transference.
Man, there's some movie that does this also, and I'm trying to remember. I feel like it was a time thing instead, where it was like this part like travels through time, and so the people we know are all a lot older and more grizzled. But anyway, like, this would be fun because you could kind of like, it'd be a coin flip, like, I'm going to set this timer, and wherever they are within this radius, like, are they in the radius or are they outside? And that depends on if they end up in this terrible place or end up outside of it and having to fight it. And like, what loved ones were in that circle and will they survive, if we get them back, kind of thing. Yeah. Tons of great plot points there.
What is your number 8?
Okay. My number 8 is a siege. I feel like, again, this is a kind of one of those things that happened a ton in history, but I haven't really seen a lot of this in D&D and like the modules and stuff in particular that I've seen. I think it'd be really fun to either prep for a siege in a castle and like think of all of the different ways that they could prepare using their magic and using whatever else to prepare for an attack. Or on the other side of the coin, what would they think of as like siege weapons or engines to kind of try to take over this place if they were laying siege to a keep of some kind? And kind of like the chess match you could do with your players of them prepping stuff, you prepping stuff, and then seeing how it shakes out.
I like it. I also, also with the last one, figuring out where you have the players engage with these ideas is also interesting to think, because my thing is like, okay, are they there and the siege happens? Has the siege happened and they need to get there? So like figuring out like, and those are ways you can fold it into your own story as it stands. Like,
yeah,
it wouldn't make sense for them to be there. So then do they need to get there? Those kind of things is what I think of. Number 7, the Shadowfell's Shroud, where basically there's a literal shroud going through the land, engulfing it in like certain areas into darkness. And it appears like an actual shroud, almost like this dark curtain going through the world. And the idea I came up, I don't know if I like it. So, well, let's say that, which means someone will love it. But the idea is that it's just updating what's in the Shadowfell. It's almost like Google Street View for the Shadowfell, because it's a dark reflection of what's in the real world. But often it's like some of the ways that I've seen that happen is oh, well, that's what it looked like X amount of time ago. Well, now that I say that, I think it's like the upside down. Or,
right, exactly.
And basically it's updating its information. And the only way that it can do that is there's a shroud that like goes through the land. And it could be one of the elements I thought of because in a game I play a Shatterkai. What if I need to avoid that? What if I don't want them to know that where I am or what I'm doing? Or, a Shatterkai character is the first I thought of. But that could be true of anybody. Like if you have, especially a higher level campaign, you have some past that you're literally trying to avoid. So yeah, you could have an interesting chase sequence. Like you're having to like travel across the land while trying to figure out how to avoid this.
Yeah. Yeah. Stranger Things is such a good example of a lot of different ideas like that. And I mean, the Duffer Brothers basically ripped off the Upside Down straight from the Shadowfell, right? Like it is a 1-to-1 from a real D&D thing. So, all right, my next one is shamelessly stolen from Skyrim. I think it would be really fun to start a campaign with some sort of civil war going on, and you get to decide kind of the implications of it. What are the two sides? What are they fighting for? But I feel like if you add a lot of layers of complexity, it means that your players then have to kind of dig through those layers and figure out which side they truly align with and why. Or maybe they just jump on one side and none of that complexity ever comes up. Or it comes up later and then they feel bad about it and switch sides. But there's a lot of fun to be had in the nuance and the gray between these two sides and what they're actually fighting for. Disclaimer, obviously, the Civil War in the U.S. was bad and it was fought over a thing that is important. And so there was not a lot of gray there. But I think you could make a Civil War with a lot of gray.
Yeah, and figuring out, knowing your characters, knowing your players, and then figuring out what would land well for them.
Yeah, totally.
Because there are like you mentioned, there are versions that have nuance, and there are versions that don't have nuance. And like figuring out what works for your players is definitely the most important piece. And I would say this is one I would hold on to loosely. And the idea that like, yeah, I'll change it. You know, if I start to get the feeling that it's not working or people are a lot more uncomfortable with the concepts that are being brought up than I was expecting, and having those, being ready to pivot anytime you need to.
Totally. The war's over. Now we're doing something else.
Yep. Number 6, though, much more lighthearted. I called it Frolic in the Feywild. Just a group of little mischievous creatures come and steal your stuff and take it back, and you got to figure out what happened. I realize that's just the cats in Monster Hunter. That's what they do. They literally will run into you, steal your stuff, run into a hole, and then you got to figure out where's the cat section in the map and go back to it and beat the cats up and take your stuff back. It is like a 1-to-1 of exactly what I'm thinking right now, where it could just be fun. It could be a one shot. It could certainly the second you've entered the Feywild, all bets are off, and you could definitely make it a whole campaign. Or the deals and the things that they do there echo throughout the rest of their arc.
I remember Mitch talking about how terrified he is of the Feywild in a previous episode, and I tend to agree with him.
The unknown.
So many terrible things could happen to you. All right, my next one. I'm trying to remember where I got the inspiration for this one from. Yes, okay. I've been I read the first book in the Expanse series a while ago, and I've watched some of the show as well. And I really like the storylines there, but I think it would be fun to do some sort of mystery uncovering a nefarious plot of someone who is doing some illegal and dangerous research, which is resulting in some terrible disease or virus or something taking over people. And, it could have taken over a whole community, or maybe it's taken somebody you love, whatever it might be. But kind of, again, uncovering layers of a plot and figuring out who is doing this and why is always a lot of fun. You've got a lot of people who are at the surface level who are not actually involved in the deep, decision-making or know the true reason why things are being done. So it's fun to give your players something to keep digging into and to, discovering. Also, I just like the zombie concept. I feel like D&D kind of just hand waves a lot of the time. They're like, well, this cave has skeletons in it. And you're like, but where did those skeletons come from and why? Or here's a bunch of zombies. Yeah, undead get used a lot, but not explained a lot. So I think it'd be fun to kind of explain why and where, and maybe that would be something interesting to dig into.
There's a game called Skeletons, and I've wanted to play it.
Oh,
and then
you talked about this on the show before.
Yeah, and then play a room before. Basically, you play as the actual skeletons, and then you kind of go that are in the room, and you keep waking up, and you start to remember your past, and it's really interesting. And you have time that goes by, but you're only awake at all when you're basically called upon to be there to defend the area. So like you're fighting adventurers as the skeletons,
right?
So it's really fun. Yeah, that's all I can think about now.
It does sound like a lot of fun.
Speaking of undead and terrible things, I entitled this one "Take a Look, Evil Book," where basically it's a lich's phylactery, and there's some bookseller, rare bookseller. This one's difficult because this was a little harder for me to figure out exactly how I layer this in. But when they go to purchase a book, basically the person will either make the phylactery into the book that they're wanting, or they'll sell it in addition or something. And it's to some effect a cursed item. And now whoever carries it is then attached to the lich. How do they find it out? I don't know. Are more undead drawn to them? Or is their power slowly waning? There's a lot of ways you can say, hey, something is happening. And then they figure out it's the book. But now they can't just destroy the book outright because now it's attached to one of their players. And so the idea that basically you get grifted into taking a lich's phylactery. But the liches thought this is a great idea. I'll just have this book keep roaming the earth. And I'd rather that's how I'm keeping it safe. Is it's basically always and forever on the move.
Interesting. Yeah, it'd be fun to like role play that, right? Like they figure out that it's bad. The rogue pulls out the dagger and is like, well, they poke it, and then the player who's connected to it also takes like a ton of damage, and it's like, okay, well, we can't destroy it like that. Yeah, there's so much fun you could have. This is a time where you would be like texting the player or messaging them, on Discord or whatever individually and telling them, oh, you have this weird dream, and it's like you feeding information specifically to them, and they get to decide what they do and don't share. Always a good time.
The other interesting thing is, I haven't thought of like, where is the lich? But also if it dies, I know where it's showing up. Near them. So that's interesting.
So much fun to be had. Yeah.
Take a look. Evil book.
Evil book. All right. My next one is Youth Detention Camp Mystery, which is basically holes with the serial numbers filed off. I think it'd be fun to run a game where all of your players are detained in some sort of camp, and they don't have to be youth, but they could. And they are forced to do some sort of labor, and you get to add a bunch of layers of mystery, like, hey, these two players are connected, but they don't know it yet, and this is actually what they're trying to find in their mining or in their, I don't know, chopping down trees. There's tons of different stuff you could do. But I feel like the movie and the book Holes just was so well written and had such a good plot for a book intended for kids. And there's a lot of fun stuff you could do with that in a game.
I like it. It's also always interesting to like kind of start them out with less resources and just being upfront with that, saying this is how we're starting. That way they're not like, oh, I got all this stuff. And you're like, well, you don't have all that stuff. They can still choose that for maybe to have later, but yeah, definitely being really straightforward with, no, you're going to start with nothing. This one is interesting. Some of these just like over time, all of them feel like they could have been something I've said. So this one is called Vacant Horde, where basically a powerful dragon has been defeated and it's near this remote mountain range. A group of brave adventurers did defeat it, but died in the process. And now the PCs have been tasked to set out and figure out, okay, well, if this dragon's dead here, I guess this is kind of like The Hobbit, but they knew where it was. But basically, like, if the dragon's dead here, it had to come from somewhere, and that means there's a layer with stuff in it. And just going and finding it. So you're not even fighting the dragon itself. So you could have basically you could have the players, just roam the countryside and do more of an exploration mission kind of thing.
All right, my next one is your players are acting as a crack team of operatives, and you get to fill in the rest of the blanks. What organization are they working for? Why are they working for them? Why are they good at what they do? And then ultimately, what are they doing? Good things? Are they doing bad things? Who are they working for? What is that person's actual motivation? Is it something where they have to figure out for themselves, oh, wait, we're doing bad things, we want to cut loose and go our own way, or we're going to keep doing these things? You could pull inspiration from Suicide Squad here or The Bad Batch, or you could do your own thing. But I feel like there's a lot of fun to be had where you're going out and you're doing missions, and then slowly but surely you're uncovering that not everything is exactly as it seems. But this is fun because you get to be, this is something where you could all be really powerful already. And there's a lot of fun to be had with sneaking into places and being really strong and powerful, blowing up stuff. Dangerous missions right away instead of having to take a long time to build your characters up.
Yeah. And that can definitely be one player having way more attachment to it, the entire group having it, and the echoes of that. Do you trust them? Do you not? Do you feel like you're doing the right thing? Do you not? There's a ton of options once you're there.
Yeah, you're really strong and a lot of fun encounters, but also could be a lot of role play around the campfire. Are we doing the right thing? Are we not? Yeah.
So my number 3, I have entitled Mind Flayer Collective. Basically, a group of adventurers stumbles upon the idea of a Mind Flayer collective. I'm not trying to say that they're thralls as much as basically I want it to be a slow burn too. You come across someone who has kind of a weird affect, they don't seem like they're acting the way that you would expect them to, and then you come to a town and you realize that there's another person kind of acting with that same affect. It's a little off-putting, but it's okay. And then it's again. And then it's someone that's kind of the progressive burn that I think of. And then you're slowly but surely realizing oh, the Mind Flayers are doing a slow burn too. They're not just trying to take over everyone or turn them all into Mind Flayers. They realize there's a lot of use in, hey, maybe we should just kind of slowly do this rather than just overtly do this. And then they show up and they stab the Elder Brain. How about a slow burn? And so I think that, again, this can be very straightforward, or you have the nuance of, well, is that person not too far gone? Is there a way that we can bring them back? The Mind Flayer Collective.
My next one is very similar to this.
Yes.
Oblex Town. So the idea is that it's either a town that your players do know and have been to before and then are revisiting, or it's a brand new town. But there's an Oblex that is set up shop in the basement of the tavern or the inn, or maybe the main government building. And so basically everyone within the radius of that is controlled by the Oblex, but the rest of the people don't know, and your players don't know. So you show up, everyone still has the memories that you expect them to, they look like they're supposed to, but something weird is happening underneath. And it's that this Oblex is controlling everything. And you get to decide why and what they're trying to do, and, kind of what might trigger the players realizing what's happening and getting to the bottom of things.
I like it. Okay. Number 2, Mystical Maze. Basically, a beholder has taken over a dwarven stronghold and transformed it into a labyrinth of traps, illusions, everything like that. But no one can actually die in there, and he's really just doing it for the lulls, and just thinks it's fun to watch people try and go through.
So it's I don't even know what to compare it to.
It's almost
like an escape room, or like one of those Ninja Warrior courses, but you actually can't get hurt.
Yeah, they think it's super fun. So then it's wait, maybe you should just. And I think, in my head, it's convincing it to be you should just ask people, knowing that they won't die. People will come here. They would even pay you probably to do this, but forcing them to do it isn't the best road. So not only do the players need to successfully navigate it, but then also have that conversation as well of yes, this is super fun. It's okay, but you can't do it this way anymore. Not not acceptable.
Make way for the speedrunners.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, because that's the other version is you already know about it, and it could be just a fun thing to go try your hand at it to see if you can like beat the previous record or something.
Yep, that'd be fun. I know a few of my players who would get super competitive about that. All right, my second to last one here is Meteor Strike. The idea, though, is that the meteor is somehow infused with some sort of either magic or mystical power or something that affects the world around it. Some ideas that I've had are maybe the meteor is just one giant anti-magic zone, and so everything around it doesn't work, and so you can't get close to it with spells or whatever working. Or maybe this is what I did in my home game. I had like a chunk of the plane of chaos get launched into the world that my players were in, and so it was just chaos magic all around the crater of this thing, and all of the people that were affected by it, all of the monsters that it created because of this magic, and like having my players figure out how to get rid of it and send it back to where it came from or destroy it. This was really cool because it ended up that my brother, who was playing a cleric, rolled on his what is the cleric ability? Is it divine intervention? Yeah, he rolled divine intervention and got it, and like asked his god to get rid of this thing and like make everything back to how it was. And so I got to describe like this thing disappearing and all of the people and the buildings and stuff like being recreated in front of their eyes, and like, you know, them righting the wrongs that had been done. So it was super fun. But yeah, I really like that idea. This one came from the Dungeon Dudes and from Drakkenheim specifically. So if you want more ideas on how to pull that kind of thing off, go check out their actual play in their book.
So my last one is entitled, my number one is entitled Cubed Caper, where basically a mysterious gelatinous cube has just been taking people, and every time it does, it gets bigger. So
yes,
I haven't quite decided, like, I think, does it get overzealous and take someone it's not supposed to? Is there someone that's controlling it? Is the town like, no, our friend? Like, it's basically defending a town is another thought I've had. Or is it like more mysterious, where it's like you go to the scene of the crime and there's just like a small bit of goo? I don't know. It just sounded really funny to just like have a gelatinous cube that keeps stealing people and keeps getting bigger. Because eventually it's just really big and like a real problem, or it divides and now it's an infestation. Or I don't know. For me, it just felt like there was a bunch of ideas out of this one, so that's why I made it my number one.
Totally. I love it. All right. My number one is a one-shot that I pulled off with my players in my last game, and it worked so well that I just had to share it. I made a TikTok and an Instagram reel about this a few years ago, but here's how it works. When one of your players can't show up, or you're just looking for a one-shot or whatever it might be, but you have an ongoing campaign happening at that moment, your one-shot is this. You tell your players to build a ragtag group of like ruffians or ne'er-do-wells or whatever that are going to pull a heist job. You set the one-shot in the game of the campaign you are currently running in one of the cities they've been in or whatever, so they're familiar with it. And then you have them steal something really powerful from someone powerful or from somewhere hard to reach. I had my players steal something from a group of like a paladin order, basically, who were holding really dangerous items, trying to keep them away from the general populace and from villains, right? So they stole this item, and then they give it to their fence. The fence pays them, and then the fence goes and sells it to the BBEG of the current game that you're running. So without them knowing, or maybe they find out somehow, your players are playing in a one-shot and they happen to steal something super powerful, which they directly will have to face later against the villain when the time comes. So yeah, I had them steal the Eye of Vecna and then give it to the BBEG without them knowing. And it was so much fun to see the looks on their faces as they never, it was hilarious because I told them you're not supposed to look in the vase as part of like the parameters of the job, and so they didn't. And then they watched their fence like walk out onto the suspension bridge, but they were way too far away to do anything. And then they watched him like get stabbed and chucked over the side of the bridge, and then the guy who bought the thing just disappeared, plane shifted. Yeah. And so they got to watch that, and they're like, what did we do?
Oh, no.
And, oh, man, it was so much fun, and I guarantee you if you do it, it will be a great time.
I like it. Okay, we've done 34, but that means for number 35, you and I have to quickly decide which two should we slam together.
Boy, I mean, we had a few that were very similar, like the Mind Flayers and the Oblex one, or I don't know. Should we do that, or should we make a new one?
Either way.
Okay. Well, how about you just pick one randomly via dice roll, and I'll pick one, and then we decide how they get combined together.
I got 13.
And I got 15.
What is your number 13? Remind me.
My number 13 would be Spelljammer, but make it alien.
That's interesting because it works well with the living maze. What if the ship itself is the alien ship? A lot of sci-fi, and especially if you were going to go this direction, the ships are alive. Like, they are at least sentient creatures, if not sapient creatures. And so what if the ship itself, because not only then are you having to contend with the alien, you're having to contend with the ship on top of it. It is like geared specifically to assist this alien. Oh, I don't like that one. That one can get so creepy.
It's like the AI, right? Like an AI from any sci-fi movie you've seen that's controlling the ship, trying to stop you doing stuff. HAL 3000, right? Like the classic example. But yeah, make it even scarier where it's like a living thing.
You could go with a symbiotic relationship that the two have, and can you navigate through that and say, hey, the alien's not that great for you. I mean, or it is just part and parcel, one of the same. Like, this is basically how the aliens are created. So like, this is where they all come from. Ships like this. So
the ship was good, and then the alien corrupts it. Like you said, the symbiotic relationship, like maybe the alien is killing things and then bringing it to the center of the ship to keep the ship alive, or to like give the ship new, I don't know, energy or knowledge or whatever it's looking for, right?
Oh, there you go.
That's terrible. I hate it, and I'm going to use it very soon.
Perfect. Well, that's 35 ideas from us, and we have the daunting, nigh impossible task of creating 35 more for the next episode.
I better start now.
But if you enjoyed any of these, or you've implemented anything near them, you can always tell us about it and email us at dungeonmasterblock@gmail.com. And of course, if you enjoyed this and you see fit and want to throw stars our way, feel free to go to your podcatcher of choice and leave a rating and review.
Be on the lookout for some exciting announcements from the Dungeon Masters block in the coming weeks/months. We have some fun announcements, some fun partnerships, and some fun giveaways we are planning in the near future. So keep it locked in on DMB. To do that, you could head over to Twitter or Facebook or TikTok or Instagram or any of the other socials. And if you are on a social platform that we're not on, then I guess tell us and we'll try to join you on that social platform. But yeah, hit us up there, ask us about things, talk about some of your favorite campaign ideas. We would love to hear from you.
And as always, the Dungeon Masters Block is a proud member of the Block Party Podcast Network, where you can check out other shows like GM Showcase, Geek Wars, Detentions and Dragons, Dungeons and Dragons and Daughters. And I can say with the absolute utmost confidence, more very soon.
Very soon. Thanks for listening to the Dungeon Masters Block, the place where we come to talk about the Dungeon Master, the most important person in the game, the only person capable of playing God,
killing characters,
and lowering the egos of all the other people at the table. I am DM Derrick, telling you to go torture your players with one of these 35 ideas this weekend.
I'm DM Neal. Good night, good luck, and keep on Dungeon Mastering.
It's not inspiration, it's not wisdom, and it's bad advice.
So, like, the next time you go to do a session, just set up a PowerPoint. First off, people love PowerPoints. And then have them vote in a survey. People love surveys as well. Yeah, it'll be fun. And make sure you have the worst transitions between each idea. And then your party can choose exactly what game they'd like to play.
I guarantee you someone has done this.
No, I hate that.
Goodbye.